12-year-old Emma Harrington sprints into Newbury Street in her Navy school uniform, blonde ponytail streaming behind her like a banner of panic. Her mouth opens in a silent scream. A black Mercedes rounds the corner at 40 miles per hour. The driver does not see her. Sofia Sinclair does not think. She moves. The grocery bags fall from her hands. Apples and oranges scatter across the pavement like spilled coins. Sofia's worn grey coat billows as she throws herself into the intersection, her body becoming a shield. The Mercedes swerves with a scream of tires that cuts through the October afternoon like a blade wrapped in ice. Sofia and Emma crash onto the asphalt together. The impact steals the air from Sofia's lungs. Her left elbow splits open against the pavement, blood streaming down her coat, dripping onto her weathered hands that have scrubbed other people's floors for 7 years. Emma sobs into Sofia's chest, her body trembling like a sparrow caught in a storm. Sofia's fingers, shaking, run across the girl's head, her shoulders, her legs. "Are you hurt? Are you hurt? Tell me you are not hurt." "I am okay. I am okay." Emma's voice is barely a whisper. Across the street, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Castellano's, a man sits alone at his regular corner booth. His name is Luca Castellano. He is 47 years old, 6'2", with shoulders that fill his custom-tailored charcoal suit like a man built for power and violence and restraint. His dark eyes are storm gray at the edges, penetrating, missing nothing. A thin scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, a gift from a rival family when he was 23. His black hair is silvered at the temples. A gold Rolex glints on his wrist. His red wine sits untouched in front of him. He has been coming to this table alone every Thursday evening for 8 years, and in 8 years, no one has ever joined him. He watches Sofia check Emma for injuries with shaking hands. He watches the girl's mouth move, whispering something into Sofia's ear. He watches Sofia hold her tighter, pressing her face into the girl's hair, breathing her in like she is the only real thing in a world made of glass. Then he sees the man. Douglas Hale strides into the intersection from the opposite corner. He is 34 years old, athletic build maintained by expensive gym memberships, wearing a designer jacket that probably costs more than a month of Sofia's salary. His jaw is clenched. His fists are clenched. He has been following Sofia for 6 months, showing up at Margaret Harrington's mansion at odd hours, ignoring the restraining order that the corrupt local police refuse to enforce because Douglas's father is a state senator. Douglas grabs Sofia's arm, yanking her to her feet. His fingers dig into her flesh. "You stupid bitch, you're embarrassing me in public." His voice cracks with rage. His fist rises like a hammer ready to fall. Sofia shields Emma behind her back. Her body curves around the girl like a mother wolf protecting cubs. She does not flinch. She does not run. She simply stands there, taking the shape of protection itself. Luca's jaw tightens. His hands remain flat on the table. His breathing does not change. But something cold and dangerous stirs in his chest, like the first ice forming on still water. Marco, his right-hand man, stands across the restaurant near the bar. In 15 years of working for Luca Castellano, Marco has seen him order executions with the tone of a man discussing weather. He has seen him stare down federal agents without blinking. He has seen him hold the life and death of dozens of men in the weight of his silence. But he has never seen him look like this. He has never seen Luca's eyes hold that particular shade of fury, not cold, not calculated, but burning. Margaret Harrington emerges from her chauffeur-driven Bentley, designer heels clicking against the asphalt with the sound of someone accustomed to being heard. She is 58 years old, wearing a cream-colored coat that costs more than Sofia's annual salary. Her blonde hair is styled in waves that took 3 hours to achieve at her personal salon on Beacon Hill. She does not run to her daughter. She does not check if Emma is alive. She stands at the edge of the intersection, staring at Sofia with the cold contempt of someone looking at a stain. "Look what you have done. You have ruined my afternoon shopping. The groceries are scattered everywhere. You are pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Margaret's hand moves with the precision of a woman who has slapped people her entire life, servants, children, employees, people she considers beneath the dignity of real conversation. Her palm connects with Sofia's cheek. The sound echoes across the intersection like a gunshot in the silence. Sofia's head snaps sideways. A red mark blooms on her pale skin like a rose opening. She tastes blood. Her own blood. Copper and shame mixed together on her tongue. Emma screams. "Mama, no. Mama." The word cuts through everything. Mama. Sofia has been Emma's live-in nanny for 3 years, sleeping in a converted closet the size of a bathroom, earning $12 an hour, and somehow Emma has decided that Sofia is her mother in every way that matters. That Emma loves her more than she loves the woman in the cream-colored coat who gave her life but not her love. Luca sets down his wine glass with deliberate control. The crystal makes no sound against the white tablecloth. He does not look away from the window. He does not move from his chair. His breathing remains deep and steady, like a man at perfect peace. But Marco sees something shift behind his eyes. Something that looks like a decision being made. Something that looks like a door opening onto a future none of them can yet see. The police arrive 8 minutes later. 2 officers step out of their cruiser with the bored expression of men responding to a domestic disturbance in a wealthy neighborhood where nothing serious ever happens. They do not arrest Douglas. They do not even take his statement. One of them places a hand on his shoulder in what might be sympathy. The other one tells Sofia that Margaret Harrington has decided not to press charges for the disturbance. "You should probably go home," the officer says. "Cool off. Your boyfriend seems upset." "He is not my boyfriend," Sofia says. Her voice trembles like a candle in the wind. "There is a restraining order. He is not supposed to be here." The officer looks at a piece of paper on his clipboard, then back at Sofia. "I do not see anything about that here. Maybe you filled out the paperwork wrong. Happens all the time." It is not possible for a heart to break and keep beating at the same time, but Sofia's heart does this thing. It breaks into pieces and keeps beating anyway because Emma is standing beside her, holding her hand, and Emma's hand is warm and real and the only thing Sofia has left to hold. Margaret collects Emma with the efficiency of collecting a piece of misplaced luggage. "Come, Emma. We are going home. You will have your dinner at 6 o'clock. There will be no exceptions." Sofia stands on the sidewalk, her elbow bleeding into her coat, her cheek red and swelling, her shoes wearing through at the heels. She has $78 in her pocket and a foreclosure notice waiting on the desk in Margaret Harrington's mansion. The notice says she has 14 days. 14 days before the bank takes the converted closet she has called home for 2 years. 14 days before she has nowhere to sleep except the streets. Inside Castellano's, Luca finishes his wine. He stands slowly, each movement controlled and deliberate, the movement of a man who has learned to make his body obey him in all circumstances. He puts on his cashmere coat, dark grey, worth more than anything Sofia Sinclair has ever owned. Marco watches him move toward the door. "Where are we going?" Marco asks. "To find out everything about the woman with the bleeding elbow and the child who called her Mama," Luca says. His voice is deep and solid like an oath. "And the man who dared to touch her." His car is waiting outside. A black Bentley, armored, quiet as a coffin. Marco sits beside him. The city passes in a blur of streetlights and rain that has just started to fall, coating everything in a glaze of amber and shadow. What changed everything was not the slap. What changed everything was that Luca Castellano saw Sofia Sinclair shield a child with her own body, and in that single moment, he recognized something in her that he had stopped believing existed in the world. He recognized the willingness to die for someone you love. He recognized a kind of courage that money cannot buy and power cannot force. He recognized the person who would unknowingly save his life on its darkest night, a night that was coming toward them both through the dark Boston streets like a train with no brakes. But for now, they were still strangers. And Sofia was walking home to a closet that was not hers, with a bleeding elbow and a swelling cheek and $78 in her pocket, completely unaware that her entire world was about to change. 2 weeks before the rain came and everything changed, Sofia Sinclair lay awake in the darkness of her converted closet and counted the crumpled bills spread across her pillow like a condemned woman counting her final breaths. $78. Exactly 78. The bills were worn soft from handling, 2 20s, 3 10s, 8 1s, and 17 cents in quarters scattered across the cotton like copper leaves. Her fingers trembled as she arranged them again. $78. That was all that stood between her and the street. The foreclosure notice sat beside her pillow, the corners already soft from being read 1,000 times. The words had burned themselves into her memory long ago, but she read them anyway, as if the outcome might change if she looked at them differently. $22,000 owed in 14 days, or the small condo her mother left her would cease to exist. It was the only thing Sofia had ever owned. She had grown up in shelters, in other people's spare rooms, in the backs of cars. That condo was the first place she could point to and say, mine. Now it was dissolving like morning fog. She lay on her mattress, a thin thing that she had bought used from a thrift store, positioned on the floor of what had once been a storage closet in Margaret Harrington's Beacon Hill mansion. The space was barely 8 feet by 6 feet. A single wire rack held her clothing, for uniforms for work, 2 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, all black or grey or navy. Practical colors for a woman who could not afford to be noticed. A cracked mirror hung on the wall beside the door. In it, Sofia could see herself only in pieces. Her face in one section, her shoulders in another, as if her reflection had been shattered and imperfectly reassembled. She did not cry. Her tears had dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus 8 years ago, the bus that had carried her away from the last shelter she could remember, toward a future she had tried to build with her own hands. She had earned her college degree in early childhood education at 20. She had worked her way toward independence with the single-minded focus of someone who had never been allowed to relax. And at 28 years old, she was more trapped than she had ever been. The lamp beside her mattress was the only light in the closet. It was a dollar store lamp with a plastic shade that had yellowed over time. She switched it off and lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the mansion around her. The house was quiet now. Emma had been asleep for hours, her 12-year-old body sprawled across a canopy bed 3 floors above, in a room larger than this entire closet. Margaret was at a charity gala in Cambridge, probably sipping champagne that cost more than Sofia earned in a week, probably telling the other wealthy women about the dedicated nanny who practically lived for little Emma. Sofia had practically lived for Emma. That part was true. The girl had come into her care at 6 years old, freshly traumatized by the divorce her parents had orchestrated with the same cold precision they applied to everything else. Margaret had been too busy with her social calendar to notice that Emma flinched at loud noises. Douglas Hale, Sofia's abusive ex-boyfriend who had somehow become the mansion's favored landscaper despite his history, had been too focused on stalking Sofia to care. It was just before dawn when Sofia heard the sound. Footsteps on the gravel outside, moving slowly, deliberately, the sound of someone trying to be quiet but failing. She sat up on her mattress, her heart a bird striking the cage of her ribs. She did not need to look outside to know who it was. The footsteps had a particular rhythm, a particular weight. She knew those footsteps. She had been running from those footsteps for 8 months. Douglas Hale had called 17 times yesterday. 17. She had not answered any of them. The voicemails blended together into a single threatening hum. Baby, why are you doing this? I see you. I know where you sleep. I know when you walk Emma to school. I could take her from you so easy. Just let me in. Let me explain myself. The restraining order was a piece of paper. The police officer who had taken her statement was Douglas's cousin. Justice was a word that other people got to use. She pressed herself against the wall of the closet and waited. The footsteps circled the building. She could hear him trying the back door, testing the lock, his breathing audible even from 3 floors below. Then, after what felt like 1,000 years compressed into seconds, the footsteps retreated. The gravel crunched beneath his feet as he walked back toward the street. The sound of an engine starting. The sound of him driving away to wait somewhere else, parking somewhere else, planning somewhere else. Sofia did not move for another hour. When the sun finally broke over Boston, she was still sitting against the wall in her converted closet, fully dressed, her phone clutched in her hands like a lifeline to a drowning person. At 6:47 in the morning, she walked upstairs to Emma's room and began her day as if her night had not been a study in terror. She knocked twice on the girl's door, a signal they had developed. Emma opened her eyes and reached for Sofia immediately, the way she always did, as if confirming that Sofia had not disappeared in the night. "Come on, sweetheart," Sofia said, and her voice was steady as stone, a voice that had learned to lie through practice and necessity. "Let's get you ready for school." Emma sat up and rubbed her eyes. She was still small for her age, slight, with her mother's dark hair and her father's anxious eyes. She wore a pajama set with stars printed across it. Sofia began the ritual that made up their mornings. She combed out Emma's hair, working gently through the tangles, creating a braid from root to tip. 2.5 minutes, always, the same amount of time. "You're good at that," Emma said. "Mama says that you do my hair better than anyone." The girl caught herself. "I mean, she says Margaret does it better. But that's not true. You're better." Sofia's hand stilled for just a moment. She continued braiding, her fingers moving with practiced care. Margaret had explicitly forbidden Emma from calling her Mama. Sofia was the nanny, the hired help. Margaret was the mother, the owner, the authority. When Emma slipped and used the word Mama, it happened in whispers, in private, as if it were a forbidden pleasure. "Well, thank you, sweetheart," Sofia said. "I like braiding your hair. It's the best part of my day." It was true. This moment, with Emma's hair soft in her fingers, with the early morning light coming through the tall windows of the mansion, with the girl still warm with sleep and still trusting, this was the only part of her life that felt like it belonged to her. This was what made the rest of it possible. They went downstairs to the kitchen, a space so large and gleaming it seemed designed to emphasize Sofia's insignificance. She prepared cinnamon oatmeal because it was Emma's favorite, stirring in a handful of raisins that she had bought with coins from her $78. The oatmeal was hot and creamy and perfect. She watched Emma eat it, watched the girl's shoulders relax slightly, watched her become a child again instead of a worried small creature waiting for the world to betray her. Emma had already been betrayed once. Her parents had ended their marriage with as much fanfare and disruption as possible, dragging the girl through court dates and custody negotiations, using her as a bargaining chip in arguments about money and property. Margaret had won custody because Margaret had better lawyers. Sofia had won Emma's trust because Sofia was the only person who stayed. After breakfast, Sofia helped Emma into her school uniform, a navy skirt and white shirt that cost more than Sofia made in 2 months. She packed the girl's lunch in a small bag with a sandwich she had made the night before, an apple, a granola bar. Love was folded into every item, tucked between the bread like a note. "Promise you'll pick me up today," Emma said. "Not the driver." "You." "I promise," Sofia said. Douglas Hale's cousin was a detective in the Boston Police Department. Which meant that when Sofia filed a restraining order, the paperwork moved slowly, if at all. Which meant that when she called the police to report that he was outside the mansion again, they took 40 minutes to show up. Which meant that by the time anyone arrived, he was always gone, and the officers who responded looked at her with a particular disdain reserved for women who were getting what they deserved. At 9 o'clock that night, after Emma was asleep and the mansion was silent except for the humming of the heating system, Sofia collapsed on her mattress in the converted closet. She was wearing the same clothes she had worn all day because she only had 2 complete sets of work clothes and both were in the laundry. She had not eaten since breakfast because Emma's lunch had been made with ingredients she could not spare. Her right shoulder ached from scrubbing floors. Her hands were raw from bleach and hot water. Her phone buzzed. Text message. She did not need to check it to know who it was from. The notifications had been coming all day. I'm parked outside. Your car is in the driveway. I can see your bedroom light. I miss you. I just want to talk. I'm sorry about last time. Please let me in. Sofia turned off her phone. Then she opened the showbox from under her mattress. Inside was a pair of baby shoes, impossibly small, made of white leather that had yellowed with age. She had found them at the shelter when she was 20 years old, with nothing, with no one, with a college degree and no way forward. Someone had donated them, part of a bag of used clothing. Sofia had kept them. She did not know why, exactly. Maybe because they represented possibility. Maybe because they meant someone, somewhere, had loved a child enough to buy it real shoes instead of the plastic kind. Maybe because she had needed to believe that if she survived this, if she made it out of the shelter system, someday she might be capable of that kind of love. She held the tiny shoes in her hands and let herself imagine it for one moment. A house. A child. A life where she was not running, not hiding, not counting coins on a pillow in the dark. Then Margaret's voice cut through the walls like a knife. Sofia. Emma spilled juice in the library. Clean it now. It's past 9 o'clock. This is unacceptable. Sofia put the shoes back in the box. She put the box back under the mattress. She stood up and went to the library to clean juice stains from an 18th century rug that cost more than every possession she had ever owned combined. In 2 days, everything would begin to shatter. The pieces would fall in a particular order, each one landing with the sound of breaking glass. And in a restaurant for miles away, a man in a cashmere coat would make a decision that would change everything. But for now, Sofia was still invisible. She was still trapped. She was still counting $78.14. The rain had not started yet. But it was coming. The rain had not started yet. But it was coming. Sofia stood in her closet room, barely 8 feet by 10, and held the tiny white baby shoes in her trembling hands. The leather had yellowed with age, the laces long since frayed into nothing. She had found them at the shelter when she was 20 years old, abandoned in a donation bag alongside faded sweaters and a single mismatched glove. Someone had loved a child enough to buy real shoes instead of plastic. Sofia had kept them. All these years, she kept them. She placed the shoes back in their box and slid the box beneath her mattress, where the foreclosure notice already waited in the darkness. 12 days. $125,000. An impossible number. A death sentence written in blue ink. Her phone buzzed. 43 messages from Douglas today. 43. Sofia turned off the phone without reading them. Downstairs, Margaret's voice cut through the walls like a blade wrapped in ice. Sofia. Emma spilled juice in the library. Clean it now. It's past 9 o'clock. This is unacceptable. Sofia went to clean juice stains from an 18th century rug that cost more than every possession she had ever owned combined. For miles away, in a restaurant on Newbury Street where white tablecloths gleamed beneath amber light and the air hung thick with garlic and wine, Luca Castelliano sat alone at his corner booth. The same booth. The same time. Every Tuesday and Friday at exactly 7 o'clock. He was 42 years old and had built an empire from blood and strategy, and he sat in this restaurant because it was the only place that felt real anymore. The osso buco arrived, steaming. His wine, from his family's Sicilian vineyard, a place he hadn't seen in 8 years, was poured into a crystal glass that caught the light like a ruby. Marco and Sal stood 10 feet away, hands clasped, their eyes never still. The restaurant owner, Giovanni, approached only when summoned. Mr. Castelliano, your table is ready. Always ready. Luca wore a tailored black suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Silver rings adorned his fingers, one bearing his family crest. A scar ran along his left jawline, a permanent reminder from the night his younger brother Nico betrayed him. 5 years ago, Nico sold the Castelliano family secrets to the Rossi crime family for $2 million and a new identity. Luca found him in a warehouse in South Boston, kneeling in the dark, begging. "Fratello, please, I had debts, I had no choice. The family required a choice. Mercy or survival." Luca chose survival. Nico's body was never found. He hadn't slept well since. Now Luca sat facing the window, back to the corner wall, watching the intersection below. The October cold had turned the leaves into copper and ash. Joggers in expensive athletic wear moved past pedestrians bundled in coats. A child's bicycle lay abandoned on the sidewalk, one wheel still spinning slowly. He didn't know that in 2 days, he would see a woman throw herself in front of a car at this exact intersection. He didn't know that her name was Sofia Sinclair. He didn't know that watching her would wake something inside him, something he thought had died with his brother. But the rain knew. The wind knew. The cold October night knew that everything was about to change. The next morning, Margaret summoned Sofia to the marble foyer. Soft light fell through tall windows onto tiles that gleamed like ice. "We need to talk about your performance," Margaret said. Her voice was honey-poured over broken glass. "You've been sloppy. Distracted. Inappropriate with Emma." She handed Sofia a folder. Inside were photographs, Sofia hugging Emma, playing with her in the park, braiding her hair by the window. Normal moments. Innocent moments. This could be seen as boundary violations, Margaret continued. "I'm concerned about her attachment to you. I'm documenting everything for her protection, of course." Sofia's voice shook. "Those are normal activities. You told me to bond with her." Margaret's smile was cold and perfect. "I'm just protecting my daughter. You understand." That afternoon, Sofia took Emma to the Boston Common. The playground was nearly empty, only the October cold and the carousel with its faded horses and the pond reflecting grey clouds. Emma ran to the swings, laughing, her small voice bright against the silence. A black Mercedes pulled to the curb. 3 men emerged, moving with the controlled grace of those accustomed to power. The tallest man wore a cashmere coat the color of charcoal. His dark eyes scanned the playground with the intensity of someone mapping terrain. Even from 50 feet away, Sofia could sense the weight of his presence. Emma climbed too high on the jungle gym. Her small fingers slipped. Sofia moved without thinking. She caught Emma as the girl tumbled backward, both of them crashing into the wood chips below. Emma laughed, unhurt, gasping with adrenaline. "Are you hurt?" Sofia's hands moved with practiced care, checking. "Can you wiggle your fingers? Your toes? Good girl. You scared me." The tall man approached. His men tensed. Marco leaned toward his boss, confused. "In 15 years, you've never stopped for strangers." Luca walked slowly toward them. Up close, Sofia could see the scar along his jawline, the silver rings, the authority that moved with him like its own gravity. "Is she hurt?" His voice was deep and controlled, like thunder contained inside a bottle. Sofia stood, brushing wood chips from Emma's coat. "No. Just a scare." "Thank you for asking." Their eyes met. Luca saw the fading bruise on her cheek that she'd tried to hide with makeup. He saw the worn grey coat held together with safety pins. He saw exhaustion that had learned to smile. "You're good with her," he said. Sofia's voice was quiet. "She's my whole world." Luca nodded once and turned away. Marco and Sal followed, their questions unasked. But as they reached the car, Luca told Sal, "Find out everything about that woman. Her name, her circumstances, all of it. Everything." 6 hours later, Sal delivered a folder. Sofia Sinclair, age 28. Live-in nanny for the Harrington family on Commonwealth Avenue. Salary, $1,800 monthly for 14-hour days. Foreclosure notice filed 6 months ago. Current debt, $125,000. Deadline, 12 days. Douglas Hale, age 34. Ex-boyfriend. 6 domestic disturbance reports filed in the past 18 months. 0 arrests. His cousin, Sergeant Patrick Hale, Boston Police Department. Luca read slowly, his jaw tightening with each word. Why no arrests? Sal hesitated. The sergeant buries the complaints. We checked. She's been asking for help for months. No one came. Luca was silent for a long moment. His silence was more dangerous than any shout. She's been asking for help for months and no one came. Correct? Yes, boss. Meanwhile, in her Commonwealth Avenue office, Margaret Harrington sat at an antique desk and spoke into her phone. The words were careful, precise, like a general planning battlefield strategy. She's weak right now, Margaret said. Keep the pressure on. I need her broken and gone by the end of the month. Douglas Hale's voice on the other end was hungry. The restraining order doesn't scare me. I know where she sleeps. I know her schedule. Good, Margaret replied. I'll pay you $15,000 when she leaves Boston. Make sure she never feels safe again. Douglas laughed. For 15 grand, I'll make sure she's terrified to stay. The phone went dark. That evening, Sofia stood in her closet room and counted her money again. $78. 78. The foreclosure notice lay on her pillow like a coffin lid waiting to close. She opened the showbox, held the tiny baby shoes against her chest, and let herself imagine it for one moment. A house. A child. A life where she wasn't running, wasn't hiding, wasn't counting coins in the dark. But her hands were shaking. She didn't believe in anything anymore. Her phone rang at 6 o'clock. Unknown number. A man's voice, deep and controlled. Miss Sinclair, my name is Luca Castellano. We met briefly at the playground. I'd like to speak with you about a private matter. Can you meet me at Castellano's restaurant tonight at 8 p.m.? I'll send a car. Sofia's confusion was visible even through the phone. I don't understand. Why would you? Please, Luca interrupted gently. It's important. I'm not going to hurt you. Sofia agreed because she was too exhausted to question anything anymore. The restaurant was all mahogany and soft amber light. Servers moved like ghosts. Luca waited at his corner booth, Marco and Sal standing at a distance, their attention absolute. Luca stood when Sofia approached. His men's eyes widened. In 15 years, he had never stood for anyone. Please, sit, he said. Sofia sat in her only clean outfit, a faded blue dress and the warm grey coat held together with safety pins. Her fear tasted like copper. I don't understand why I'm here, she whispered. Luca poured water with his own hands. Marco's eyes widened further. The boss serves no one. I saw what happened on Newbury Street, Luca said. The slap. Sofia's face flushed with shame. That was a misunderstanding. I dropped her groceries. I deserved. No one deserves to be struck, Luca said. His voice was quiet. Which meant it was absolute. I also saw you save the child from traffic. You didn't hesitate. You could have been killed. Emma is everything to me, Sofia whispered. She's the only good thing in my life. Tell me about Douglas Hale. Sofia's eyes widened. How do you know about Douglas? I know many things, Luca said. Tell me. Sofia broke. Everything poured out, 2 years of terror, restraining orders that meant nothing, a cousin in the police department who made sure nothing happened, text messages every night, the feeling of being hunted inside her own life. And Margaret Harrington? Luca asked. She pays me almost nothing, Sofia said. 14 hours a day. I sleep in a closet. I have a foreclosure notice for $125,000. 12 days left. I have $78. 78. I've applied everywhere. No one will hire me. I think she's giving me bad references. I'm trapped. Luca was silent for so long that Sofia could hear the sound of ice clinking in his glass, the soft murmur of other diners, the breathing of his men across the room. "Why would you help me?" Sofia asked finally. "You don't know me. I'm nobody." Luca looked away, out the window at the intersection below, at the October cold and the fallen leaves and the bicycle wheel that had finally stopped spinning. "You're not nobody," he said. "You threw yourself in front of a car to save a child who isn't yours. You've been asking for help and no one came. Someone should have come." His voice dropped lower. "I know what it's like when the people who should protect you destroy you instead. My own brother sold my family to our enemies. I chose survival over mercy. I've regretted it every day since. Maybe this is how I make something right." Sofia didn't understand. But she was too exhausted to question it. "I'm going to handle this," Luca said. "You and Emma will be safe. That's a promise. That's not a threat disguised as kindness. That's a vow." Marco leaned toward Sal across the room and whispered, "In 15 years, I've never seen him like this. What is happening?" What was happening was something no one could have predicted. Luca Castelliano had just looked at Sofia Sinclair and seen not a nobody, not a victim, not someone broken by the world. He had seen someone who deserved to survive. And when he moved to protect her, he would move like a storm, like a blade, like the very rain itself, inevitable, unstoppable, remaking everything it touched. 3 days later, Sofia Sinclair sat in the marble foyer of the Harrington mansion holding a garbage bag. That was everything. A garbage bag. Her clothes folded small, 3 pairs of socks, the show box with the baby shoes wrapped in tissue paper, a toothbrush, a phone that was running out of battery. $78 in her wallet. The foreclosure notice was now 8 days away. 8 days until the bank came and took the only roof she had ever owned. Margaret Harrington descended the staircase like a woman made of ice and money. Her heels clicked against the marble with each step. Each click sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. A sentence that said, "You are done. Pack your things and leave tonight," Margaret said. "I've documented your inappropriate behavior with Emma. Serious concerns. I'm calling your references and making sure no agency in this city will touch you. Your daughter will be better off without someone so unstable in her life." Margaret had smiled when she said it. A smile like a blade. Emma came running down the stairs, her small feet thundering against the steps. "No. Sofia, no. Don't go. Please don't go." The girl was 7 years old. She had sleep in her eyes and confusion on her face, and she was crying the way children cry when the world breaks a promise they didn't know they had made. Margaret grabbed Emma's shoulder and pulled her back. "Don't be dramatic," she said to her own daughter. Sofia was just the help. Sofia looked at Emma's face. She looked at the girl's outstretched hands reaching for her. She looked at the small face crumpling like paper catching fire. And then she picked up the garbage bag and walked toward the door. That night at 2 a.m., Douglas Hale was waiting outside the mansion gates. He stepped out of the darkness like a wound opening. He wore a leather jacket and his eyes were the eyes of a man who had convinced himself that rage was the same thing as power. "You think you can just ignore me?" His hand shot out and grabbed Sofia's arm. His fingers dug into the fabric of her coat and the skin beneath. "You think I'll let you go?" Sofia pulled away. "The restraining order says you can't contact me. Leave me alone." Douglas slapped her. The sound of it echoed off the iron gates. The sound of it filled the October air like a gunshot in a library. "That piece of paper means nothing," he said. "I own you. You ruined my life when you left me. Now I'm going to ruin yours." Sofia fell to the sidewalk. Her palms scraped against the concrete. She could taste blood. Copper and salt mixed together. Douglas stood over her, breathing heavy like an animal that had just run prey to ground. "Margaret paid me to make you disappear," he said. "But I would have done it for free. You humiliated me. No one humiliates me and walks away whole." He left her there on the sidewalk. Sofia walked through Boston Common at 2 in the morning. The October cold bit through her thin coat like a blade wrapped in ice. Dead leaves scattered across the frozen paths. Wind moved through the bare branches. The pond was black. The park benches were empty. The whole world felt like it was sleeping, and she was the only thing still awake and still broken. She sat on a bench facing the water. Her cheek throbbed where Douglas had hit her. She could feel the swelling starting, the skin tender to the touch. She had $78 and a garbage bag and 8 days before the bank took her house. She had no job. No references. No one who would hire her. Margaret had made sure of that. Sofia opened the show box. Inside were the tiny shoes. The first pair of shoes her daughter had worn in the hospital. Pink and white. So small they fit in the palm of her hand. She had carried them for 5 years. They were the only thing she owned that mattered. She thought, I have nothing. I am nothing. I fought so hard and I still ended up here. Alone. Broke. Scared. Maybe Douglas is right. Maybe I deserve this. The thought was clear and cold, and it moved through her mind like water. She thought about the pond. How cold it would be. How quiet. How easy it would be to just stop fighting. To let the darkness win. To close her eyes and let everything end. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. Emma asks about you every hour. She drew you a picture. You are loved. Don't forget that. Sofia read it 3 times. She read it until the screen blurred. Someone remembered. Someone cared. Someone in the world had thought of her at 2 in the morning and sent these words across the darkness. She closed the show box. Not tonight, she whispered to the pond. Not ever. Meanwhile, across the city in the private office of Castellano's restaurant, Luca Castellano sat in a leather chair that cost more than Sofia's annual salary used to be. The office was all dark wood and leather, and the smell of expensive cigars long since burned down to ash. A single lamp cast shadows across his face. Marco and Sal stood near the door. A man in a grey suit sat across from Luca with a folder open in front of him. Federal Bureau of Investigation badge clipped to his belt. Agent William Torres. 47 years old. 12 years with the Bureau. A man who understood that sometimes you needed to work with the devil to catch devils worse than yourself. Luca slid a folder across the desk. Everything you need, he said. Margaret Harrington. 42 years old. Charity foundation called the Harrington Trust. 3 years of wire transfers in and out. For $0.7 million. Money laundering through art purchases, property flips, and cash donations to political campaigns. All documented. All traceable. Torres opened the folder. Douglas Hale, Luca continued. 39 years old. Running illegal gambling operations out of bars in Southie and Dorchester. His cousin is Sergeant Patrick Hale, Boston Police Department. Protection in exchange for a cut. 6 documented assaults. 2 of them against women who filed complaints that mysteriously disappeared. Threatening communications. Stalking. His apartment has photos of his ex-girlfriend plastered across an entire wall. It's all obsession and violence, and the kind of rage that ends with someone dead. Torres looked up from the folder. How did you get this? Luca's voice was quiet. That's not your concern. Your concern is whether you want the arrest of the year or whether I take this to someone else. Torres nodded slowly. We'll move at dawn. Both of them, simultaneously. No warning. No chance to call lawyers or move money or disappear. Luca leaned forward. I want them both destroyed. Publicly. Completely. No plea deals. No early release. No mercy. Do you understand? Understood, Torres said. 6 in the morning. Douglas Hale's apartment in South Boston. 12 FBI agents in tactical gear hit the door with a battering ram that sounded like thunder. The door exploded inward. Douglas was still in bed, wrapped in sheets that had probably cost more than Sofia's deposit on the house she was about to lose. He screamed. "What the hell? You can't do this." Agent Torres stood in the doorway holding the warrant like a sentence. "Douglas Hale, you're under arrest for assault, stalking, racketeering, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and conspiracy against a federal witness. You have the right to remain silent." Douglas's face went white. "I have connections," he said. "I know people. My cousin." "Your cousin Sergeant Patrick Hale was arrested 20 minutes ago," Torres said. "He's in a holding cell downtown. You're done. Both of you." Douglas sank to his knees. The sheets fell away. He was trembling like a cornered animal with nowhere left to run. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. This isn't happening. I'll give you names. I'll give you everything. Please." The agents dragged him out in handcuffs. News crews were already waiting outside the apartment building. Camera flashes lit up the pre-dawn darkness. The footage played on every Boston news channel within 1 hour. The image of Douglas Hale in handcuffs, screaming, being led away like an animal to slaughter. That image would never leave him. That image was the beginning of his erasure from the world he had thought he owned. At 6:15 a.m., FBI agents surrounded the Harrington mansion on Beacon Hill. Margaret was still in bed when they knocked. She came downstairs in a silk robe that probably cost $500, her hair in a sleep braid, her face pale with the shock of being woken by federal agents. "This is absurd," she said. "I'm Margaret Harrington. Do you know who I am? My family has been prominent in this city for generations. There's been some mistake." Agent Torres held up the warrant. "Margaret Harrington, you're under arrest for money laundering, conspiracy, and conspiracy against a federal witness. You have the right to remain silent." Margaret's voice became a shriek. "I have lawyers. I have connections. I have done nothing wrong. This is a mistake. A terrible mistake. Is there someone we can call for your daughter?" Torres asked gently. Margaret ignored the question entirely. She was still screaming about her reputation, her status, her right to dignity, as the agents led her out of the mansion in handcuffs. News cameras caught everything. Her face. Her disheveled hair. Her designer robe. Her tears. The way she looked like every powerful person in the world when power finally ran out. The headline scrolled across news channels by 8 a.m. Prominent Boston socialite arrested in multi-million-dollar laundering scheme. Federal authorities claim years of financial crimes. By 9 a.m., the story had spread across every local news outlet. By noon, it was national. 3 months later, Douglas Hale received 40 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility. No early release. No mercy. Margaret Harrington received 35 years plus complete asset forfeiture. The mansion was seized. The cars were seized. The charity foundation was dissolved. Her bank accounts were frozen. Every painting she had purchased with dirty money was evidence. Every real estate transaction was unraveled. She was stripped of everything. Reputation, wealth, freedom, dignity. All gone. All destroyed with the precision of someone who understood that sometimes justice is not about death. Sometimes it's about watching someone lose everything they built and knowing there's no way back. Luca sat at his private table at Castellano's with Marco and Sal standing nearby. The television mounted in the corner showed the evening news. Margaret Harrington being led out of the courthouse, photographers screaming her name. Douglas Hale's mugshot, the wild eyes, the face of a man watching his world collapse. "It's done," Marco said quietly. Luca nodded. He had not eaten. His wine sat untouched, red like blood, like a prophecy. "Now find Sofia Sinclair," he said. "She doesn't know yet. She's going to learn she's free. And I need to be the one to tell her. The television in the shelter's common room flickered with the early morning news. Sofia stood motionless, her hands trembling as she watched. The screen showed Douglas Hale being led out of federal courthouse in handcuffs, his face wild, his eyes the eyes of a man watching his world dissolve into ash. Then Margaret Harrington. Her designer robe torn at the sleeve. Her perfectly styled hair matted against her skull. Her mouth open in a scream that the television volume could not quite capture. Prominent Boston socialite arrested in multi-million-dollar laundering scheme. Federal authorities claim years of financial crimes. Sofia could not move. The other residents of the shelter drifted past her, their voices distant, their footsteps hollow on the linoleum floor. A woman named Teresa, who had been homeless for 3 years, touched Sofia's arm gently. "You okay, honey?" Sofia whispered, "Those are the people who destroyed my life. And now they're gone." She did not understand how. She did not understand any of it. Douglas and Margaret, the two people who had systematically dismantled her existence, were being led away in federal custody. The news anchor said something about racketeering and conspiracy and federal investigation. The words meant nothing. What mattered was that they were handcuffed. What mattered was that they were falling. Sofia's phone rang. Unknown number. Her hand shook as she answered. "Miss Sinclair?" The voice was deep and solid like an oath. Like stone. Like something that could not be broken. "This is Luca Castellano. Can you meet me at the restaurant?" Castellano's on Hanover Street. "There is something you need to know." The line went dead. Sofia stood in the shelter's common room, the morning light turning everything gray, and felt something crack open inside her chest. Fear. Hope. Confusion. All of it twisted together like a knife through flesh. 2 hours later, she walked through the mahogany doors of Castellano's. The restaurant was empty except for the staff preparing for lunch service. Luca Castellano sat at his corner booth, the one that overlooked the intersection where she had thrown herself in front of a car to save Emma's life. He wore a black suit that cost more than a year of her old rent. His dark hair was brushed back from his forehead. On his left wrist, a gold watch caught the light. But his eyes were what stopped her, storm gray and burning with something she could not name. He gestured for her to sit. Sofia did, still holding her worn purse, still wearing the second-hand coat with safety pins holding the seams together. She sat across from him like a prisoner at her own trial. "The news," she said. "Douglas and Margaret." "Was that you?" Luca did not lie. "Yes." Sofia's hands folded and unfolded on the table. "Why?" "You don't even know me." Luca was quiet for a long moment. His fingers traced the edge of a wine glass, untouched, red like blood like a prophecy. 6 months ago, I was ambushed by a rival family. The Rossi organization. They knew my route, my schedule, my security details down to the minute. They shot Marco. They shot Sal. I took 3 bullets. 2 in the chest. 1 in the shoulder. I was bleeding out in an alley off Newbury Street, right outside this restaurant. He pointed to the intersection visible through the window. The space between the buildings where the rain pooled and the wind cut like a blade wrapped in ice. A woman found me at 11:56 at night. She was walking home from a double shift, exhausted, barely surviving herself. She could have walked past. She could have called 911 and left. Instead, she stayed. She held pressure on my wounds with her own coat. She talked to me, kept me conscious. She said, "Stay with me. You're going to be okay. Stay with me." Sofia's eyes widened. Her breath caught. The memory struck her like a fist, the blood, the weight of a dying man, the desperation in his voice as consciousness slipped away like water through her fingers. Luca continued, "The ambulance came. I survived. By the time I could ask her name, she was gone. I've been looking for her for 6 months. When I saw you in the street, when I saw you throw yourself in front of that car to save Emma, when I saw that man raise his fist to you, when I saw you being slapped and humiliated and broken, I knew." Sofia's voice shattered. "That was me. I remember you. You were in that alley. You were dying. I didn't know who you were. I just couldn't leave you." Luca stood and walked to her. He did not touch her. He simply stood there, and his presence filled the entire restaurant like a storm about to break. "You saved my life when I had nothing to offer you in return. So I saved you when you had nothing left. We're bound by shared darkness. We both know what it's like to be betrayed by the people who should love us. We both know what it's like to survive when survival feels impossible." Sofia could not speak. Tears fell silently, running down her cheeks, salt and shame and relief all mixed together. Luca returned to his seat. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside, papers. Numbers. Documents that made no sense until they did. "The foreclosure is paid," he said quietly. "All $22,000. Your condo is yours. There's also $50,000 for you to start over." $50,000, Sofia. "And custody of Emma has been granted to you temporarily while the courts find permanent placement. She asked for you specifically. She told the social worker, 'I want to stay with Vivi.' She's the only person who never left." Sofia opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing emerged but a whisper. "Why?" "Because no one should be invisible," Luca said. "Not you. Not anymore." Marco appeared from the shadows near the kitchen, and at the sight of him, Sofia understood that every moment since the alley had been watched, orchestrated, protected by forces she could not comprehend. "Boss," Marco said. "The car is ready." Luca nodded. He looked at Sofia, and something in his expression shifted, something vulnerable, something almost human breaking through the armor of power and control. "You're not nobody. You never were. You're the woman who saved my life when I was dying in the dark. And I don't forget debts. You call me if you need anything. You call me. You're under my protection now. No one will hurt you again." He left. Sofia sat alone at the table, the envelope in her hands, unable to believe any of it was real. 3 months later, Sofia's small condo in Dorchester glowed with pale yellow paint on the walls. Emma's bedroom overflowed with books and toys. The girl was officially in Sofia's foster care, finalization papers already signed, the adoption process beginning. On a Saturday morning in late February, sunlight streamed through clean windows. Sofia braided Emma's hair with gentle, practiced hands while the girl ate cinnamon oatmeal at the small kitchen table. "You're safe now, sweetheart." "We both are." The doorbell rang at 10 a.m. Sofia opened the door to find Luca standing on her doorstep in a black suit, holding a small wrapped box. He looked uncertain, almost vulnerable, almost like a man instead of a legend. "I wanted to check on you both." Emma ran to him, her voice clear as a bell. "Mr. Luca." Sofia invited him inside. He had been visiting once a week for the past 3 months, always proper, always respectful, but something was growing between them, a connection forged in mutual rescue, in shared darkness, in the knowledge that they both understood what it meant to nearly die and be saved by a stranger's courage. Luca handed Emma the wrap box. She tore through the paper and gasped. A children's book with a painted cover, a girl kneeling beside a wounded bird, her hands gentle, her face determined. "Thank you." Emma hugged him and ran to her room to read. Luca and Sofia sat at the kitchen table with coffee. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of everything that did not need to be said. Sofia finally spoke. "I still don't understand why you did all this. You owed me nothing." Luca looked at his coffee cup, steam rising in thin tendrils that disappeared into the air like prayers. "I told you. You saved my life. Sofia, you saved mine too. We're even." Luca met her eyes. His voice was rough. "I don't think we'll ever be even. I think we'll just keep saving each other. Sofia's breath caught. The moment hung between them, fragile and real as glass. Luca stood to leave. But would you and Emma like to have dinner this weekend? Somewhere nice. As my guests. Sofia smiled, genuinely, for the first time in years. We'd like that. As Luca walked to his car, Marco was waiting, arms crossed, a knowing smirk on his weathered face. Boss, you're courting her. Luca did not deny it. She's different, Marco. She sees me as the man who bled in an alley, not the man everyone fears. That's rare. Marco nodded slowly. Don't let her go. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones who have nothing left to give except their presence, their courage, their refusal to walk away. Sofia saved Luca in an alley when he was dying. Luca saved Sofia when her world was collapsing. Neither expected anything in return. That's the difference between transaction and connection. Real protection doesn't come from power or money. It comes from seeing someone's humanity when everyone else sees a victim, a problem, or nothing at all. Douglas and Margaret saw Sofia as weak, disposable, something to use and discard. Luca saw her as the woman who stayed. And that changed everything. Justice came not because the system worked. Justice came because someone with power chose to wield it for someone powerless. That shouldn't be rare. But it is. And that's why this story matters. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who needs to remember that kindness isn't weakness and that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who protect the vulnerable. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story about a woman who refused to stay silent. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever helped someone without knowing who they were? Or has someone helped you when you had nothing to offer in return? I read every single one. Sofia, Emma, and Luca walked through Boston Common on a clear November afternoon. The bitter October cold had lifted. Emma ran ahead, laughing, her voice cutting through the silence like a bell. Sofia and Luca walked side by side, not touching but close enough that their shadows merged on the pavement. Sofia pulled out the small show box from her bag and showed Luca the tiny baby shoes inside, worn and faded, kept for more than a decade. These are from the darkest time in my life, she said. I kept them to remember I survived. Luca looked at them, understanding everything in that single moment, and now? Sofia smiled, and the smile was not sad anymore. Now I don't need them. But I'll keep them anyway. To remember where I came from. Luca's voice was soft as silk. You're extraordinary. Sofia laughed, genuinely. I'm a nanny who slept in a closet. Luca corrected her, his hand finding hers. You're a woman who throws herself in front of cars to save children. Who saves dying men in alleys? Who survives foreclosure and stalkers and abuse and still gets up every morning? That's extraordinary. They watched Emma play, and for the first time in years, both of them felt something like hope. Something like home. After the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. This story teaches us that even in the darkest moments, love finds a way. If you believe that, hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and tell us how this story made you feel. Thank you for staying with us until the very end.